Good morning or afternoon, depending where you are. Welcome. Thank you for joining. We'll just give it another few seconds to let the last few people who are joining come in, and we will get started. So I'll be with you in 30 seconds or so. Okay, right, let's get started. Good morning, as I said, or good afternoon, depending on where you are. Thank you. Hello and welcome for joining what promised to be an insightful webinar focusing on choosing the right tech when it comes to CX programs. My name is Jamie Thorpe. I'm Head of Experience Management here at Ipsos. I'm really pleased today to be joined by Kathryn Scott and Lesa, our lovely client, who will come to you very shortly. But for now, good morning, ladies. Hello, how are we?
Oh, great. Thanks, Jamie.
Good stuff. Excellent. Welcome. Thank you. Look, to say that the CX world has changed in recent years is a massive understatement. When I started in CX years ago, I could have only dreamt of the tech that's now available to CX professionals. And what we see today is that tech has become an integral part of any CX ecosystem, especially successful ones. And that ecosystem is an important CX factor that we're going to drill into today. Class-leading programs that we see in customer experience today need that potent combination of both best-in-class tech and leading expertise. The importance of CX itself as well is greater than ever before. So when you think about the cost in both time, money, effort, energy in standing up a CX program, and when you think about the tech decision that's made alongside that, it's a decision that businesses don't want to get wrong. And frankly, businesses can't afford to get wrong now, because getting it wrong can set a brand back literally years and can literally lose millions of pounds or euros or dollars or whatever currency you're in. And frankly, that's why Ipsos CX exists. So we specialize in understanding the tech and how it can be applied in best-in-class CX programs rather than investing in the software itself. That's not what we do. But we recognize when it comes to software, it can be a minefield. It can be confusing to the uninitiated. And there are lots of slick talk tracks out there and some amazing software and amazing demo that can look great in 30 seconds. But when you start to kick the tires of the tech, when you start to think, what is this really going to do for me? What am I buying? What am I going to implement in my organization in the short, medium and longer term? It can be confusing. It's something that we need to make sure we all get right for the betterment of the experience within the organization. And this is what we're going to discuss today. So for clarity, for those joining the webinar, we aren't going to go through the pros and cons of each platform. There's more than there ever have been before, and frankly, we don't have time to do that today. Independent organizations like Forrester in their Wave report and Gartner in their Magic Quadrant do that, so we don't need to do that. But the software position in those rankings is becoming increasingly relevant, increasingly important, and something that we're seeing come through in the language and in the narrative of clients. We recently had a client say that as they progress through their CX maturity, they used to buy bottom left technology. Now they're moving into the top right. So it is an awareness referring to the quadrants, of course, but we're not going to get into that today. What we will be doing is we will be having a conversation with Kathryn and Lesa from Bupa. I don't need to introduce Bupa itself. Everybody knows the Bupa brand, about how they've adopted and brought in the tech and how we've helped them do that. My colleague Lorraine published a thought piece on this recently, and that prompted a huge amount of debate, which is what has brought us here today. And as you can imagine, it's a conversation we're having very, very regularly. So we will remind you actually towards the end of the webinar that you can still download that paper. That's a free to download paper without any of the annoying data capture. You want your third generation of your grandparents' maiden names, none of that. You can just get in and you can get the paper. So we'll pop that link in at the end of the chat at the end of the session. So in the time that we've got together today, we are going to attempt to cover a number of areas and we're going to try and stick to time. So this will be a challenge, so bear with us. We're going to cover the top considerations to ensure that the tech is the right fit for the organisation. We're going to talk about how Kathryn, Lesa and Bupa started to compare providers fairly on a like-for-like basis. We're going to identify some of the red flags or things to watch out for, or how to overcome some of those things that might come through in the talk tracks and the demos that I mentioned earlier. And we're going to touch on the different ways that brands can go to market, because there are so many different ways. And as I said earlier, the CX ecosystem has advanced massively and it can be complex. So this will be a dialogue between the three of us. So we're going to jump around a bit. So please bear with us. So at this point, I'm going to shut up. You'll be glad to hear. I'm going to introduce our guests. So Kathryn and Lesa, would you mind please doing an introduction to yourselves and your roles?
Yep, sure, thank you. So I'm Kathryn Scott and I head up the customer insight team at Bupa, and I lead a team of research specialists. So we've got quite a broad responsibility, one being our UK NPS programme, but also my team is responsible for bespoke research projects. So that can be anything from new product development through to comms testing. And we also run a Bupa think tank, which is our own online community of Bupa and non-Bupa customers that support us in the research that we do. And of course, we also manage brand tracking as well. Lesa?
Hi, I'm Lesa Ali. I'm a research manager in Kathryn's team. I've been at Bupa for about 4 years, but in the world of research and CX for about 12.
Very good, thank you guys. And we'll obviously come to more detail and a bit more shape around your team. But when you list the number of things, Kathryn, it is certainly indicative of what insight teams are facing into today. So this is just one part of it, which again is why it's so important to get it right. You're not just sitting there full time running the program that that we have together. So to start with, then maybe you could explain how the CX insight ecosystem works within Bupa and why it is the way it is.
Yep, sure. So previously we had CSAT surveys. That is something that we still do today, but I guess recognised that we needed to, we worked with multiple agencies ultimately, and we didn't really have that depth of understanding of our kind of data and our insight. So we worked with multiple agencies, they provided us with high-level reporting, but no real analysis capability, and we didn't have a central platform either. And as part of that, we also didn't have that kind of lead metric in NPS, so that we kind of started to think about that and evolve the program over time. In 2021, it kind of brought about a new global Bupa strategy. So with our new CEO, there was even greater focus on customer. We also had a new ambition for NPS, which meant that we'd see kind of significant growth in our program over the coming years, and that's something that we really needed to be thinking about now and also for the future. And I think then we knew that we needed to make a step change in our CX really, and we recognised the need for the CX expertise, but also needing that kind of powerful technology to support us within the business and be able to kind of share that data and that insight kind of widely with our colleagues. As part of that, we obviously recognised that actually one component wasn't really going to be enough for the path that we were on, and that we needed to really recognise that we needed both of those elements to set us up for success both now and in the future. So we work with Ipsos, and we also utilise the Medallia platform, and that's really allowed us to push forward with our plans and our initiatives to grow our programme over the last couple of years. So in terms of how we work with Ipsos, we partner with them. They're really an extension to our team. They provide the programme management, an additional layer of CX expertise over and above what we have within our team. and the insight, and they obviously they manage and operate the tech for us as well. So I think for me, in terms of understanding our Bupa ecosystem, where we were and where we've come to, but also where we need to get to, that's been really important. And to do that, we actually undertook an assessment to look at the maturity of the programme. And we did that with Ipsos. And that's really allowed us to that piece of work's really allowed us to kind of understand the gaps in our programme, to develop a roadmap for the future, and to ultimately get us to that kind of best-in-class state.
Perfect, thank you, Kathryn. And you can see the maturity assessment, the Ipsos maturity model on the screen there. The three levels of maturity in the middle, and then the 6 competencies around the outside. So you know, we've talked about that before, but it's really nice to obviously discuss how in practice that's made a tangible difference to your organisation, and importantly that roadmap, as you mentioned. Yeah. The other thing that that strikes me when you're talking, again, thinking about the breadth of what you do, is the size of the team, and most of the clients we're working with are small insight teams, and that's the reality of where we are today. And I know a number of the people on the call will be in a similar situation, so I'm sure that what you're saying there will resonate with them. When we think about the scope of the program, so you've talked about how the ecosystem works, the scope of the program, would you mind just elaborating a little bit on that and how you interface with the business? Because again, you're serving many different internal clients. If you could just give a bit of an explanation of that, that would be helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, so we're part of a central UK function. So my team's focus is the UK business areas. We're obviously very well known for insurance, but actually our business areas cover insurance, health services. So we have clinics and also the Cromwell Hospital in London. And then we also have care services, which is our care homes and Richmond Villages, and most recently our dental practices. So it's a real kind of broad kind of breadth of different type of services, and our business, our kind of central team focuses on delivering the MPS programme and all of other parts of the research for all of those business areas. As Jamie said, we're a small team, but the commitment to CX is massive in Bupa. Our general managers, our exec team, our frontline facing customer staff all support the kind of ambitions, the growth ambitions really for us as a business. So we run our programme for all of our business areas, as I said. We've done a lot of customer journey mapping, and that's really helped us to identify the touch points that we want to measure. So we've had significant growth in the programme over the last couple of years, really looking at those key customer touch points that we want to gain customer feedback from. And as a business, we have a common kind of common word in the fact of micro moments. So, and that's supported across the globe. So all of our market units across the world measure their MPS using micro moments. So that's really key for us to have that joined up approach. We also partner, so our CX leads actually sit within our business areas. So we partner with them daily. We work with them very, very closely to deliver the programme for them.
Thank you. I think I said to you previously, there's no way I was going to get through this without mentioning your global CEO. So when you talk about the commitment to CX within the organisation, having spent, I think we had nearly an hour and a half with him, didn't we? And you know, there's a man that knows the ins and outs of your CX program, which I'm sure in every way is a blessing. But to say, you know, senior sponsorship and engagement from the global CEO is definitely not lip service within Bupa, and obviously the UK CEO. And the micro moments piece is really nice as well, because it is leaning towards what people want. They want shorter, sharper surveys. Just getting that moment in time, that touch point, just getting that feedback to act on is really important. So thank you, brilliant. Yeah. So I'm going to come to talk a bit about the lenses we look through, if you like, when we're looking at procuring software. And at Ipsos, we are platform agnostic. We work with the leaders in this space, and so we procure the platform for clients on 90% of the occasions. Where we're working, we look at the RFP, we understand the needs of the client, And there are a number of benefits in having us do that, because obviously we understand the tech, and there are many more. So it's very common nowadays to have this agency software ecosystem. And the approach that we take, as I say, is get close to a client, get close to requirements, understand what they have now, think about what they need in the future. And over the years, I've seen so many brands rush to put a solution in, and frankly, regret it in the longer term, because it costs them dearly in a number of ways if people rush to get this in. So this critical decision needs to be taken carefully. And as we've said, most client-side teams are small and they need that support. And whilst enablement and self-service can often be an aspiration, and it's something we're very happy to support, the reality can be sometimes a little bit different. So that's a material factor that we consider when we are looking at the platform selection process. So I want to share with you 3 areas that we focus on when we're looking at how we procure the platform. The first is around functionality. So we think about, what does the brand need today and what does it need in the future? Linking back to the maturity assessment, we'll come to talk a little bit about platform audit and program assessments we do. This discovery, this calibration is really important to make sure that it connects in with the business. Is it something basic that the brand needs, or is there a genuine desire to grow and innovate? You know, does the brand just want an NPS number, or are they looking to deliver culture change in CX? Does that reality line up with the ambition? We see sometimes some clients with these massive aspirations, but they're not going to be able to deliver it both from a maybe even a budget point of view or an internal capability point of view. So what are those needs? And then does the platform have the functionality that the business needs now? And what's their approach to getting that in the future? Because if we don't get that right from a functionality point of view, we end up with fragmented ecosystems, multiple licenses, costly integrations, so it can become a mess. So that functionality piece is really important. From a commerciality point of view, platform pricing can be complex, it can, and the model needs to be carefully considered. Is it volume-based, or does enterprise make more sense? Where's the tipping point there? Is it consolidation of tech? We've recently put on a program with a retailer that had 5 different techs in place to deliver their holistic CX program. So if it is commercially viable and the functionality stands up, which platform, based on how they model their pricing, what the client needs, what the functionality is, makes sense? Are they looking for a high-end solution, or are they looking for something more rudimentary? So we have to really consider that commerciality, and again, with the longer term in mind, because you don't want to be hit with additional prices further down the line when you know what you need now and you have a good view of what the future might look like. And then another that we'll come back to actually is around flexibility of the supplier when it comes to commercials. So we'll come back to how flexible they are. The third and final consideration I want to share with you is brand fit. So like any product or service, what brand stands for is important. How does the vendor's purpose, culture, vision, values align with the organization? Much more common now than ever before in the world in which we live. And also here, alignment on things like innovation, investment, business size, compliance, commitment to security. Some clients are much more stringent than others. What is that commitment? How does it work? That's so very important. So functionality, commerciality, and brand fit are the 3 that I would share with you there. So there are many nuances and many pitfalls, and this clearly goes much, much deeper. But for now, just to share those 3 with you as food for thought. So when you go to market to look for a CX program with platform tech, what are the most common ways in which people can do that? So getting that level playing field, as I've mentioned up front, is really important. So when we go to market, we see 3 most common ways in which people go to market. The first is engage an agency to bring in the tech. And as I said, that's incredibly prevalent now. We see it all the time. Obviously, as an agency, we would. As I mentioned earlier, a number of benefits in doing that, but I would say it's well worth engaging the agency first, because then we can engage the software in context with what the needs are. When all the gates are open and everyone's talking at the same time, it can cause confusion. So that would be a suggestion, but obviously everybody has a different view. The second is engage the agency and the software simultaneously. And we see that sometimes. They say, well, actually, I want to engage the tech directly because my IT people want to engage directly and engage the agency as well. That's fine. That's not a problem. It can be slightly more risky, but just to make sure that those are joined up, because if people are not having consistent conversations, it can take more time to execute an RFP or to get through the process, and you can lose things in translation. And then the third that we're seeing, actually much more common nowadays, is keep the tech. We're happy with the tech. We've been through the investment process. Everybody understands it's established, but we now need more from our agency. And this used to be previously quite rare, but as CX evolves and organisations become much more mature, we're seeing that come through an awful lot more. And there's an awful lot that can be done in there. If you've got a provision at the moment that you're not happy with, it doesn't mean that it can't change. So there's a lot of flexibility, but there's a lot of complexity as well. So when it comes to what Bupa did, you went for number one, right? So that was your agency-led solution. So why was that?
Well, I think we knew that we needed a CX and an insight-led solution. So that was the sort of leading component for us. I think it's been mentioned the size of our team a few times now. So that model felt like the right model for us. Another critical thing for us was ensuring that there was a strong relationship between the agency and the tech. I think in research teams, there's probably a bit of a continuum where you might have teams that are really knowledgeable about tech and teams who are less knowledgeable about tech. And you should really think about that in your kind of go-to-market strategy. But I think even if you feel you're really knowledgeable about tech, it's really useful to have the agency there to bring that independent perspective as part of your decision making, and really thinking about both your current needs but also your future needs, and then ensuring that those will and can be met.
Yeah, thank you, Lesa, and that's really important. So if you think about what we've discussed so far, then we know what you want. You've created your ecosystem. You know how you want it to work. So then we get to the all exciting RFP stage, which everybody loves. So what did you do here? Who did you engage through this process?
Yeah, so we conducted quite a thorough RFP process, I would say. Started off by identifying potential suppliers. Really thought about the brief that we were putting together about our needs and what those specifications were, thinking about not just the functional but also the non-functional requirements of our needs. And then we allowed time for agency questions so that people could put together the best proposal. So some of these agencies would have been more familiar with our business than others. So we gave them the time to ask questions. And then we reviewed the proposals. And one of the important things was having a cross-functional team as part of those kind of presentation and pitches. So we had everyone, we had procurement, we had the all-important IT to ask the geeky questions that we couldn't ask. We had some of our CX partners in, we had privacy. So it was really a multifunctional team. And we created a selection criteria, so looking at all the capabilities, the expertise, and got to a short list of agencies from that. And then spent some time calibrating the responses, so making sure that the language was uniform and we were judging fairly apples and apples. What I would say it's quite a time investment, and it shouldn't be underestimated how long that takes. So we had another part of the business who had done something similar, so we learned from them and made sure we were starting early enough. But it did take a long time, and there really are no shortcuts, in this process. We had to be fully focused and engaged. And really ensure that the right people were brought in at the right times throughout that process. And it worked really well for us. I think had we, cut any corners or not followed that process, we would definitely have had some issues.
Excellent, thank you. And I've written down a couple of things I want to pick out here. The time is one, and I think you can't, as you said, you can't cut corners. It sometimes amazes me the importance of what we're doing here from CX point of view, how it can make a difference to business, and how sometimes these things are rushed and people don't give the time to agencies to deliver that engagement. I think the engagement itself, we'll come back to, but the old way of beating up agencies is you know, by and large gone. It still happens, but by and large it's gone. Most mature businesses recognise they need to be open and share information, and they're in a partnership even at the early stages, because what people capture in an RFP process, and you know, you don't want things to get lost as they go through to, you know, if the agency is successful. So invest in that time and actually taking that engagement, rather than putting together what I've seen some terrible RFPs and they just get thrown over the wall and people don't talk to you properly. And actually, we respectfully withdrew from a process recently with a very well-known retailer who I won't name, as they wouldn't invest the time, and we didn't feel that mutuality. So if you don't get it, it is a two-way street. So that's really important. But that chemistry point, that mutuality when it comes to engagement, what was really nice about the process that you led is that you guys were really keen to get to know the team during that pitch process, and that you invested that time in our relationship. That was important to you, right?
Yeah, I mean, we work really closely with our partners, so chemistry is important. Engagement, personality, all of those things are important. So we were happy to invest that time to really get to know our potential future partners. I know we live in an online world now, but I really think the face-to-face pitches kind of really helped to set that groundwork in the first instance.
And you mentioned the calibration as well. So we're used to working with platforms, we're used to the language they use, but we do recognise, as I mentioned right up front, that you know, can be a minefield to, I think I said, the uninitiated, the layperson. It can be confusing, lots of red flags. The tech really is very good. I mean, it's absolutely amazing. But you need to understand what every aspect of it does, and importantly, what it doesn't do and what's included in the costing. And Kathryn, I know, you know, you were very keen to make sure you understood as much of that as possible as we went through the process.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think, like you say, it can be really confusing. So we did find the advice from Ipsos really helpful, and the questions to ask and the technical specifications, all of those discussions really helped us. But it comes back to the time investment point. I think the more time you invest up front, Lesa mentioned the kind of functional and non-functional requirements. You've really got to be thinking about everything you need, from the kind of whizzy tech stuff all the way down to, is this, you know, can we build the charts and the graphs and the dashboards that we really need for our business, and that our users are ultimately able to use, and that it is user friendly. So many different elements to think about. So yeah, I would say it's so important to understand what you're buying. You will see the best of the best, and you will see the entire offering that a lot of kind of tech providers can give you. But we kind of referring back as well to our maturity work and our roadmap. We've had to consider, what can we do now, and what can we do in the future? We don't want to be constrained by the tech. We don't want that to limit the things that we want to do. But equally, it's been really important for us to buy what we need now, and then have those additional elements, those additional modules and things like that available to us should we want to add those in the future. And that's been really key as well in terms of managing costs and budgets, because everybody's got that budget, you know, it's never quite enough. So really just, I think, thinking about what our business needs and what our business is set up to do as well. You can't underestimate the time that you need to put into implementing and kind of embedding a program like this. So you're not necessarily ready, but stakeholders aren't ready to receive everything in one hit. So actually, some of the things that we've done, we've taken our time over, and we've introduced things as we've grown the program.
Yeah, perfect, thank you. And that detail component, I was in a meeting the other day, and Becca and my team actually said, you know, we need to talk governance. We know it's not sexy, but it's really important. And it's so important, the detail, the governance, getting into the statement of work and where the data is going to move to, how things are going to integrate, so important. And then linking it back, as you said, I mean, the maturity and the roadmap work that we do is you know, become really, really important for a number of organizations. But it's really pleasing to see how it's made a difference for you, you know, looking at where you were baselining, where you were benchmarking, you knew that things were maybe needing to drive that step change. So linking that in and amongst the tech was really helpful. I'm really pleased to see that come through. From a functionality point of view, how detailed did you go though? What are some of the areas that you covered when you were thinking about the tech?
We were very detailed, and again, that goes back to the very long Excel spreadsheets of functional and the non-functional requirements, because like I say, we wanted to make sure that we had what we needed now, and there were elements that we almost didn't know what we needed. So this was going to be this was going to be an education as well. But there was some key things that we knew we needed, and we really needed to make sure that through the presentations and all of that we could understand what the offering was and what it would enable us to do. So some of our needs were around real-time data access, a sophisticated text analytics function, which would allow all of our stakeholders across our business areas to kind of start to understand the data and to kind of delve into that data, and a platform that was accessible for everybody. We wanted and we have rolled this out to all of the people in our business. There are very few restrictions that we have within our business for our people to really see what our customers are telling us. Joining up of internal and external data sources, we have done some of that, and again, that creates us an opportunity for the future. And then also the things around integrations. So we wanted to be able to provide mobile access. We wanted our exec to be able, when they're on the move, we wanted them to be able to access the platform. So lots of different elements, some very simple things and some more complex things, that has kind of built our program over that time. We also with Ipsos undertook a platform audit. So that's really allowed us to kind of recognise some of the efficiencies that we could gain through the platform. And like I said, when you've got budgets and cost control is always key, we've actually been able to grow our program whilst kind of improving our processes, and really keeping control of those costs as well. So yeah, it's worked very well. It's a long process, but I think that the gains that you certainly see at the end.
Excellent, thank you. And we touched on the CX hunger within your business at the moment, and the growth that's important. And you've mentioned a number of key areas there: real-time data, TA, platform accessibility. All of that good stuff in terms of the core. We knew that you needed that in the early stages, that was the core of the program. But obviously, as the program has grown and as the hunger from the business units and the senior people within the organisation, so is the desire to push the platform, the tech, the program, all of us to the next level to continue to deliver. So one of the things I mentioned earlier on in the commerciality section of those 3 points I made was around the flexibility of the software vendors being part of that criteria. And I think that's a great example for Bupa. It comes at various stages, down the line in terms of maturity, but video is a great example. You didn't necessarily have it in at the start, but it was something that you implemented, or that we implemented. How did that manifest for you? Because obviously it wasn't in the original spec as such.
Yeah, it's a great example actually, Jamie. I think customer listening is a key part of our strategy, and it's become even more of a focus in the last few years. And I think video is really powerful for that. We weren't ready for video at the start of our program, so we didn't include it. But as we evolved and embedded the program into the business, we started discussing the addition of video. And we were really helpfully able to trial it, which was really useful before we committed to adding it in. And I think having the right provider that one has the capability, but even more importantly, is really flexible in their approach to enable us to learn and then turn it on, was really useful. We've got a big D&I strategy as well. Really focused around accessibility, and I think having that option available to our customers to leave feedback is also really important, and sends that message of accessibility as well. So it's really worked for us on so many levels, and I'm sure it won't be the last edition as we continue to grow the program.
I'm sure. I mean, the fact that it was in the ecosystem, the fact that it was so heavily invested in, the fact that it was in the same environment, and that they were able to, or we were able to get that trial, I think is important before you, that sort of try before you buy. And I think that's one of, and again, one of the many things that's great about the software vendors is when they have that flexibility, they don't expect you necessarily to buy it all in one go if you want to trial it. So that's a really great example, and nice to see that in practice that actually worked for you. So that's fantastic. Somehow we're coming up to time. We billed us as 45 minutes. We are now 11:36 local time. So we actually only have 9 minutes left. I don't know where the time goes. So what I might do is we've got a number of questions that have come in. If I just revisit what we'd set out to cover at the start here. So we wanted to talk about the top considerations to ensure the tech is the right fit for the organization. We talked about functionality, commerciality, brand fit up front, and as we've gone through. Everyone's different, every organization is different, but getting these right are the difference for the business, and people can't afford to get it wrong. Comparing providers on a like-for-like basis is something we talked about. Creating that level playing field, try and get that equity in terms of making sure that you are comparing like-for-like is important. And as we talked about, getting into the detail and spending the time is really important. Work through those technical specs. Think about the roadmap, think about the maturity of the business, be honest about it. If you can't do it, you can't do it. And really only make a plan for what is achievable within the organization, and think about what that looks like in the future as well. Think about the red flags, think about governance, ask the questions, pull out those red flags. If you're not sure, ask, demystify it, use simple language, lean into a partner for that practical expertise. I find it best to use real situations rather than hypotheticals when it comes to actually thinking about what that looks like. So don't be afraid to ask. They're very happy, software vendors and agencies like us are very happy to spend the time to make sure that there's nothing left uncovered in terms of what your needs or your questions are. And then think about the different ways that you want to go to market. Engage the agency, have them bring in the tech, engage both if that's what your business needs, or think about where you are in your ecosystem of what could change. So we've covered those things. Amazingly, we've gone through nearly 40 minutes now, so I don't know how, but there's an awful lot more that we can provide, and there's more that we can talk about. And there are pros and cons of all of this, and every organization is different, and it can be complicated. So I just want to say thank you so much. Before we come to Q&A, thank you so much for sharing your story. I know you are still on a journey. I know you've made a big step change in recent times, and that will continue to grow, but it's really fascinating, and I know people that have joined want to hear it from client side, which I'm not offended at all. That's fine. They want to hear from you, and so that's great. Thank you for spending the time and sharing your story today.
All right.
Okay, let's come to Q&A. So we've got a couple of questions. I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit, I think. And if we don't get to all of the questions, because we have got quite a few, we will come back to you afterwards, and there are opportunities to reach out to us directly, so we can come back to that. So one of the questions I've got here is, how do you make sure you're getting the best commercially by using two providers?
Okay, so I think for me, and we've touched on it already, it really starts with having a really robust RFP process. You need to make sure that you have enough detail coming in from the agencies and also from the kind of platform provider, so that you can fairly compare. And I think Lesa touched on this as well. And you need to ensure that ultimately that you're buying the capability that you need. You're recognizing what you may need for the future, but that you're not buying things now that you can't use, or that your business may not be in a position to use, or you may need to do a lot of work around engagement and rolling out some of the parts of the software. So I think that's really key, is making sure that what you're looking at when you've had your presentations and things, you can kind of put all of those together. You've got your scoring criteria from your presentations and proposals. It's quite hard, I think, to do a like-for-like comparison, but the closer you can get with that, I think really helps you understand that kind of best deal commercially. And then I think from a shortlist, if you get to that point where you've got a shortlist, it's really helpful in the way that we did with Ipsos, which was actually, rather than just thinking about spending money, look at some of the efficiencies you can actually make in your program. It doesn't need to be continuous add-ons. Look at how you can do things efficiently, and actually that sets you up for potentially investing in some of those new and exciting features for the future as well.
Yeah, that's a really good point, actually, and that's where some of the platform audit work helped identify some efficiencies. So no, that's a really good point. Thank you. Lesa, I'm going to shoot one at you if that's okay, which is, and I know because you deal with a lot of the day-to-day here, do you deal with a tech provider or the service partner?
I mean, our main relationship is with the service provider. So Ipsos, you know, they've got accredited people who feel like part of our day-to-day team, to be honest. And this really helps to drive efficiencies. The team, they have the context of our business. They you know, they're really clued up on our program and our business. So that's really helpful. I mean, Medallion are involved, and Ipsos encourage that, but the day-to-day is with our team at Ipsos.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Got another. How are we doing for time? Another one or maybe two, depending how we get on. Someone's asked around the exec buy-in. The tech supported the exec buy-in, and we've talked about how they were bought in anyway. But has the program that we put in helped get that buy-in? Lesa, I see you nodding there. Is that?
Yeah, I think so. I think, you know, our programs evolved and advanced very, very quickly in recent times. As you say, we've got exec sponsorship for everything CX that we're doing, and we've actually done some really exciting, if you find CX exciting, things recently. You know, we've built a whole new CLF role, closed-loop feedback role, specifically for execs. So, you know, they're starting to do some of our customer callbacks and things like that as well. And we've tasked them with coming up with some ideas off the back of some of the customer videos and things as well. So they have to do that on a sort of monthly basis. And I think, you know, they're very engaged with that. And it's really, really good actually to see how the program and everything we've put in place is really enabling that. It's actually really rewarding to see. So.
Perfect. Thank you, Lesa. Look, I'm at the point where I realise I'm not going to get through the questions that have been asked here because I've got them. I'm looking at them. I've got questions around the maturity, questions around some tech functionality, questions around what's the right amount of time for an RFP to get it right. How do you democratize the insight via the platform into multiple business units? I think, you know, unless you those last couple there, length of time for RFP. I can't remember how long. It can feel like a long process, but again, you can't argue about that because it's all about detail and time. It's got to be a few months, right?
I think it was. If you're gonna really just go through all of those stages and give yourself enough time to make those decisions and, you know, check with IT whether things are going to work and all of those things, it's lots of conversations. I'd say about a year. I don't know what you'd say, Kathryn.
I would say similar. I think the engagement within the business area before you even start to think about the engagement from an agency perspective is really key. And I think if you can bring those kind of key stakeholders together, you know, there's questions that you just can't answer yourself. No. There's, you know, a huge amount that you need to do around the data and, you know, customer data, security and those sorts of things and privacy. So the earlier you can start to have those conversations, I would say the better.
And we love that as well, by the way. We're talking to a client, an organisation at the moment that want to launch in Q1 25. So that's amazing, right? You know, we love that. So, you know, perfect, absolutely brilliant. Bring that early. You cannot engage agencies early enough because the more we know, the better it is to align to your needs. The democratization of data via the platform, I think, is probably a more detailed answer that we need to give. You know, how we set up the roles, the users, and push that out into the business, I think, is one we'll have to come back to. And then the other questions we are going to have to come back to because amazingly, we are at time. So I'm really sorry to those of you that asked questions that we didn't manage to get through. we've obviously got your details. We'll come back to you. We'll answer those questions gladly in more time. But for now, I don't want to overrun too much, and I'm already at risk of doing that. So I just want to say thank you so much to Kathryn and Lesa for taking your time, but also sharing very openly your views. I'm sure it's been hugely valuable to the people who've taken part, and those people are going through this process at the moment, or maybe thinking about what might be next for them. So thank you again. Our lovely photos, or your lovely photos, and my quite serious photo are there. We're on LinkedIn. If you want to find us and connect or drop messages or ask questions, please do. But for now, thank you so much to everybody. Amanda, if you wouldn't mind, you just messaged me to say you're doing that. You're one step ahead of me. Thank you for putting the link in the chat for the document, the paper that Lorraine released. That's us, and we are at time. So Kathryn, Lesa, thank you again, and have a good rest of your day, everybody.